Genoa, a town of 53 residents, located in the heart of fiery Gippsland, the epicentre of the 2020 bushfires that ravaged vast landscapes across Australia. A place that seems to be frozen in time, capturing the essence of regional Victoria at every turn. There lies so much to be seen and discovered within such a small community. Natural landscapes permeate from its surroundings, drawing in tourists to explore the forests of Jingalong National Park, its beaches, estuaries, fishing and isolation. How does one begin to understand, let alone design for such a place? A town that is situated 500 kilometres away from its nearest capital city, isolated from the rest of Victoria, yet connected via the great chasm of tarmac of the Princes Highway. It would be a disservice to see Genoa as a simple pass-through town, embedded within the national thoroughfare network. Can we look past what is on the surface, scrape away the layers of a region that teems with natural drawcards even after so much was destroyed? Its quirky charm and a sense of peaceful stillness, yet still brimming with life. A place recovering from disaster 15 months on. This is Genoa.
I think the main concern for residents of Genoa that I was expecting to see before we went was maybe the issue of bushfires and land security for these communities, especially after going through such a traumatising experience, how they're adapting to that.
For me, the issues that I expected the people of Genoa to feel would have to be a sense of isolation that they have. You know, they live so far away from places like Bairnsdale and Eden. They have to travel all these places. And then we saw during the 2020-2019 bushfire season that the town essentially was forgotten.
I think the main concerns will probably relate to their physical and probably like social distance from the rest of East Gippsland.
It's just a declining industry and local economy, and the consequence of that, like mental health and physical health and just people's livelihood.
I think the kinds of strategies the people of Genoa will want is a decentralized service system. So moving away from having all of the services collected in one area of East Gippsland and moving to smaller services being spread on a local scale.
Maybe not so much a strategy, but just awareness of their existence within the community.
At a practical level will be things like funding, advertisement of their community, probably like a statewide level.
As an ageing demographic, I believe that they'd ask for amenities tailored to children in the hope to entice younger families to invest in the area and therefore to hopefully, create a prosperous future for future generations.
I think the main activity I was most excited to do was the one that I was in charge of, which was the site visit, because I actually had a bit more input into that one.
The reflections that each group had, of course the content is super important, but I find people really open up when they talk about the things that they've done, when they get into those tangents and they start to explain the type of activities and the outcomes that they have. I find that that's when the true meaning of what they're actually putting on the paper comes out.
The opportunity to take photos on the site, I think there's something really fantastic about the experience of being on the site, as well as the landscape that surrounds it, which is being degraded by the bushfire.
I was also super excited in the site visit, just really curious to see what it would be like for a lot of these people returning to a vacant site that used to be the embodiment of their childhood, and just hear the stories they have to tell.
I was really excited for Pinpoint. I guess we just really weren't sure of the extent that residents had to travel outside of Genoa for their key services. So yeah, I was really excited to see about that.
I think I was very aware of the biases that I possessed before going to Genoa because we had done the positioning ourselves exercise earlier in the semester. But mostly the fact that I am an urban dweller and come from a city and really have no experience of regional living, I think this was a huge bias for me because I was just so disconnected.
A few biases I had were pretty similar to everyone else, like being quite urban, even though my upbringing was, I would call rural, but definitely not as rural and remote as Genoa is.
I had those biases as well, but I also made assumptions that maybe they wouldn't be as interested in or care about topics such as Indigenous affairs. And going in, I really wanted to try and make sure I asked the difficult questions.
For me, like my bias is extremely urban, not just in lifestyle or cultural aspect, but as well the lack of knowledge in nature in general. And I'm just kind of worried about would that affect my ability to empathize with their struggle.
The response from the attendees was generally positive.
Super positively.
They seemed to really understand like why we were doing these exercises and what they were contributing to.
They were more open to the more creative methods of the workshop than I thought they would be.
There was some people that got more involved in the activities than others, but I still feel like everybody got their word out.
You can never tell with these sorts of things if people actually come in and do their best, but we found that they did.
The part of the workshop that I thought had the most information was probably traffic lights.
In terms of raw data, the wishlist activity produced the most information. But in terms of narrowing it down, the traffic light activity was really good to see what we needed on like a necessity-based structure.
It was so valuable to understand the priorities that people placed on different ideas being implemented in Genoa.
The mapping task, for sure. When people actually start to map it out and they can spatially put on the page, I think that's a super powerful way to start to spatialize the ideas.
And also the site visit was quite productive for me. Some of us actually had the time to have a one-on-one conversation with the residents, and we got a quite emotional response out of that, and that gives us a whole new sentiment of perspective.
Look, all of it was from the very beginning. Adaptation was the core of the workshop, really.
One example, like when we were out on the site visit, I was expecting everyone to just be off taking photos and stuff, but there was actually a lot more that we got from that just from one-on-one conversations. It's a different dynamic to what I expected, and we certainly adjusted what we were doing now. We kind of spent a little bit more time just chatting.
I'm the camera crew, so I have to change my entire filming strategy just because, like filming from far away just doesn't work.
There's definitely times like I had to step back a little bit and let everyone else take control.
I was amazed by how many ideas people were coming up with during the wish list activity. They filled up their sticky notes really quick, and we decided to extend the time frame as a result, and I was running back and forth delivering more sticky notes.
What I did not expect was the open-mindedness of individuals and their ability to participate and be open to new things, and also their willingness to share with us what they wanted.
I didn't expect to have such a rich conversation about the need to reduce the speed limit passing through Genoa.
How far the residents actually travel for certain things, like just doctors and specialists. There's a few that travelled up to Canberra just for certain appointments, which is quite unfathomable for someone who lives around here.
Yeah, I was really surprised by the knowledge that they had of our world, so particularly about like solar systems and gas services and things like that.
One of the most interesting outcomes that I found from the workshop was there was a lot of emphasis on the regeneration of the pub. I was thinking there'd be a lot more to do with the more public sites that we're working with, but there was a huge emphasis on the pub being such a cultural centre of the town. And even though a lot of the things they were wanting could be seen as quite unrealistic, I think it's an interesting area of the redevelopment of the town.
For me, it was just people's determination to move forward. Like, they've been through so much. We saw with the fires, the devastation when we were there and when we were driving around. But the fact that even though these people have been through this, they are still able to move forward and just continue on and take this opportunity really to leverage new ideas within the town and, grapple with these big problems, but then make something new and more exciting.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, the town also has this tension between reminiscing about the past, the historical good old days, as well as being ambitious for the future as well.
For me was the number of potential proposals that were put forth. There are so many ideas being thrown around for what people want, just so much content to work with.
I learned that despite the town's residents having many conflicting ideas about redevelopment, the community is still resilient and strong enough to collaborate and progress towards a prosperous future.
Yeah, I think I didn't realise how broad the Genoa community is, much more so than just the township.
It's really made me realise what a small community can achieve and the strength of a small community. You know, when people band together and they have a clear goal of what they want and what they want to achieve is super powerful. And we've seen that by doing this workshop, that, you know, there may only be 50 people that live in this town, but they all want to strive for that change, and you can see that it will happen if people continue to do that, and it's quite a powerful thing to witness.
The workshop showed just how willing the residents are to shape their own future in a really positive and far-reaching way.
I think the most important thing when we're looking at assisting places like this is to just be sensitive and always listen to their needs. Like, it can be easy to come in with an approach that we know best as architects, but as we've seen from the workshop and from all the fieldwork that we've been doing, it really is that most knowledgeable other, and there's people that live within these places that have that knowledge.
We're really used to pulling together different disciplines and sort of organising people, and I think that that's what we could really bring to this.
We're also responding to neglect from council, a declining population, an ageing population, ageing infrastructure, and all of this is going to help in addition to the recovery from the bushfires as well.
To address bushfire, we have to address all the other problems.
My perceptions of the regional context have really, really shifted. I think I just had a little bias going into it, thinking that, you know, small town people were a certain way and had certain beliefs. And it was just so different to what I expected. Everyone was so open.
Going in, I thought they were a very isolated community, but they were discussing how, you know, they're all in it together, they all work together, not just themselves, but the communities around them, like Gypsy Point and Malakuta as well.
We need to think like a bit further out than just the initial town, but how it affects the regional area as a whole.
Regional Victoria and Genoa, like I saw, was very homogeneous, but turns out it's very dynamic, some tension there and lots of good potential, and also underdeveloped as well.
The only thing I'd do differently across the whole trip is just engage with more spontaneous conversation with locals, just because I think that's where you find out the most, because it's kind of unfiltered and unrecorded and just really kind of raw. I did have a few conversations and I got a lot out of them, so just more of that.
For me, it's simple. Just slow down and listen more. You know, listening is so important. These people hold the knowledge. All you need to do is listen. That's where you'll find it.
But I think it would have been really interesting for us to go out to the participants' site themselves and interact with them in their own context and get their stories on their terms.
Gain more confidence in asking questions that I perceived to be difficult. The one time that I was able to, we gained so much information from it.
Yeah, definitely spend more time. Spend more time in Genoa and just walk around.
I think
This whole experience has
For me, this experience has just made me question.
Really makes me question my method of practicing architecture as a top-down design process.
making me realise how important it is to interact with people, places and histories that aren't your own.
We can't just go into places and then design what we think is best. We need to consult people, we need to slow down, we need to think, and we really just need to be sensitive.
This experience has made me realise just how important this participatory process is to architecture.
I think it's just so integral to the way that we design, to talk to people and find out what they want prior to going in and just ripping it to shreds.
how permanent what we do is, and how much it impacts people. And it's made me realise how important that is, and it's something that I'll definitely take into future consideration with any projects that I ever work on.
We have a responsibility to contribute to and reshape what the world will be tomorrow, and sometimes the best way to do so is by listening.
Findings like these help us to understand place. This mode of co-creation, it seems, is a tool that can be utilised for multiple settings across many disciplines. In regards to Genoa, these methods give light to the possibilities of carefully curated, context-led designs that factor local knowledge, scientific understanding and design integrity into outcomes that will ensure stable futures for residents. How and why we design should always be questioned, our bias always checked, because as architects, we don't design for people, but with people.
That's the fountain of life.